Hey, everybody.
We have such an exciting announcement to make, and we've kind of made it in little videos, but we want to tell you about our newest product.
Yeah, it's a workshop. It's a 3 to 4 hour workshop. It's called The Solution to Addiction. That's a pretty bold name, I think, but it's accurate. We're going to provide you, Michelle and I, in an online workshop, The Solution to Addiction.
Yes, everybody's been asking for this. This is for all of you guys who keep saying, I get it. I get that addiction is not a disease. I get that I'm not powerless. Why the hell do I keep doing this?
Yeah. So what we're going to do in this workshop is we're going to apply the science. One of the things that people have said since we published our book in 2017 is, I get the science. Like Michelle was just saying, I get the science. I just don't know how to apply it. And when we do coaching, we're able to apply it with people incredibly efficiently.
Yes.
And so we've been doing that now for 5 years in various ways, all kinds of workshops. Our 2-day workshop where people come up and fly in.
Just tremendous.
Yeah, we do obviously distance learning through coaching with our various coaches. And what we've done is we've consolidated all that experience, the research, the science. And so you can join us. It's $79. You can join us for this workshop, and we will deconstruct your binge construct, the ideas behind why you get high and drunk, or if you have a behavioral quote unquote addiction, PMO, gambling, gaming, shopping, any of those, all of those above, we can help you solve those issues for good.
Yeah. You're in control, right? Based on what you've learned, but maybe there's just something about this habit that keeps you going back to it. And we're going to demystify that for you.
That's right. So yeah, the sign up, we'll have 4 events. Each one is its own event. You don't have to sign up for all 4.
No.
But we have different time slots that we created for your convenience in the month of April.
Yep.
And April 1st on our website, the registration will open. It's unlimited worldwide. And we hope that we get millions of people.
We do. We want to help as many people as possible. That's always been our goal, is to change the way people view addiction and change the way people are helped.
And this is going to replace the treatment recovery nonsense that's out there. It's going to make it obsolete. Finally, people won't have to go to rehabs. They won't have to be in IOP. They won't have to be on MAT drugs the rest of their lives. All of that can go away to common sense. And we will show you how.
Yes. So go to thefreedommodel.org on April 1st. Choose the date that works for you in April, and we will see you at the workshop.
See you at the workshop.
Welcome to the Addiction Solution Podcast. I'm Michelle Dunbar. Enjoy listening and watching as addiction experts Mark Sheeran and I cover controversial as well as helpful topics on addiction, how to move past it, and other related subjects. As 2 of the co-founders of the Freedom Model, Mark and I will give you a completely new perspective on the topics that matter to you. We will take to task the Recovery Society's lies and misinformation and replace them with facts, research, and the methods to move on from addiction struggles without 12-step meetings, rehabs, and the shackles of endless recovery. Let's escape the treatment and recovery trap together and learn to be free. Welcome to the truth. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Addiction Solution. I'm Michelle Dunbar.
And I'm Mark Sheeran, and we co-wrote The Freedom Model for Addictions, Escape the Treatment and Recovery Trap with Stephen Slate, our colleague. And we have a special guest, a good friend of ours, Finn.
Yes, who's been around the Freedom Model for a long time now. It's been a few years.
Yeah. So we want Finn to tell his story, and let me give a little background as to why I think this guest is special to us. First of all, he's been a real ardent supporter of what we do. He understands the nuance of what we do. And
absolutely. He's really active in the group, and helpful, to the people that are coming in.
Yep. And I think he's got a story that's important. It's akin to what Michelle and I went through as young people in the treatment community. some of the hellish things we went through being in the cult of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Even
more. More formalized treatment. I was stuffed in treatment for 18 months. Michelle went through, was indoctrinated in AA young as I was, but Finn was in more of the formalized sort of therapeutic community nightmare, really. So we're going to start the talk there, and then we'll just see where it goes.
Yeah,
so,
like we do.
Yeah. So Finn, it's really awesome to have you. Welcome. And why don't you start just telling a little bit of background, and we'll go from there.
Well, I am a diehard Yinzer, which is a Pittsburgher. We say like
yes,
Southerners say y'all. Yes, very much so. It's a whole zeitgeist, but we are a meds and eds town. We're known for medical education.
Yeah.
And so I was in the first adolescent drug rehab in one of our local hospitals. So it was not a troubled teen thing yet. They were just starting to make that a business. This was actually in a hospital, but they used a lot of the Minnesota model, which came out of Synanon, that cult, because the guy thought AA wasn't hard enough and strict enough. So I was at 15 years old. I had probably smoked less than 30 joints in my entire life, but I was already controlled. I was sold on drugs are what you do when you don't have a good life. From every TV show I had watched, you know, if it was Willis is going to get high on pot tonight on Good Times, I'm going to go watch it because, you know, I was interested. I was all about. Number one, they overhyped the risks. You know, like if you smoke a joint, you're going to end up shooting heroin and, you know, becoming a prostitute. And none of us believe that crap. I had older siblings that were doing it. Okay.
Right.
And so what I believed is that they were a really good time. Yes, you could get out of control with them, but the worst consequence was you would have to go to one of those meetings where these really nice people would applaud you if you just said you were an alcoholic or a drug addict.
Right.
That's how I believed it.
Right.
Because that's what they showed. And then everybody was happy with you and life went on. Okay. So I'm sure I'll go lie and say I'm an alcoholic and get love bombed, you know? So I was all about using. So putting me in a rehab, I could see the justification. The rehab, very abusive. You got the neck signs, you know, with a picture of a crying baby or having to do humiliating acts. Like one kid had trouble getting up. So they made him the town crier and he had to sing this song about being a clock and announce things, you know, just anything to do to shame you.
Humiliating.
Right. So, I mean, things like not being allowed to have clothes because you had to be reminded that you were in a hospital, you were sick with a disease. Okay.
Let me jump in. How did you go from, and how old were you? So how did you go from a kid that's
smoking pot,
smoking weed, to getting put into something that severe? Because what you're describing, I want the audience to know there's a lot of people that in our audience that might be younger that weren't privy to that early therapeutic community model. I grew up with it because my older siblings went through it and then I was stuffed into it. And some of that has been phased out and morphed into the adolescent sort of troubled teen industry where they kind of pushed it into that corner. And it still happens in rehab. Make no mistake, they still shame, but they're more nuanced and it's more a pharmaceutical game now. But you got put into a pretty harsh system young. So how did that leap happen?
That was the first adolescent drug rehab available in this big city. You know, Gateway had only been open. Gateway with Abraham Tversky's one of the big, know, drug and alcohol gurus. Well, he treated me. He was the director of this program I was in that I'm talking about.
So what did you do to get stuffed in there though? What did you get in trouble?
I got caught getting high at school. I got caught getting high at school. And my mother, of course, freaked out because my mother was much older. My mother was born in 1925. I was a late in life baby, and you know, oh my God, my kid's on drugs. And it was 1983. when Nancy Reagan was drugs, just say no, drugs are going to catch your children and all that crap.
Yep.
So they, and she had decent insurance. It wasn't really going to cover all of this, but they terrified and guilt tripped her. Well, I'm sure you're a good parent who's super concerned about this. And we've done an assessment and they, they meet criteria for inpatient treatment.
Yeah.
That whole song.
The game.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure you guys, I don't know if you got this term up in New York where you were, but down here in Pittsburgh, we had the Alcabrats.
No, that's awesome.
Yes. It was a bunch of either us that had gone through rehab or kids of AA members who, we're saving a seat for you, kid.
They were both saving seats for us.
Yeah, we were called the Young Guns. Because Young Guns had just come out in the late 80s. And my parents were born in 28. So, and I'm the last of the 12 kids. So my parents were in their 40s when I was born, So I'm getting the story here.
Yeah.
It's the same era. We're maybe a couple years different.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, one of the reasons that I buy into Freedom Auto as well as I do, because I'm actually very skeptical and I do not recommend anything that I don't really like.
Right.
So, it's because I know your stories are true because I've lived them. And you sharing the level that you do, that's the only thing that makes me feel safe. And also the fact that you guys will take the risk to say AA is a cult.
Yeah.
I know cult experts that are really supportive of that belief, but because of the professional blowback that can happen, they have a really hard time, just blatantly being able to say that safely. So the fact that you guys are not out, you were outside that system enough that you can speak the truth.
Yeah.
I desperately needed to hear that. I'm not sure if I would still be around if I hadn't heard that.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's why we thought it was so important, because living it, anybody that's lived it and escaped it knows unequivocally that that's what it is. I mean, and so even, and when we do say it and we get all of the hate for saying it from the very people who are indoctrinated, it reinforces it.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's
that they don't say it's sad to me that they don't see it. Or some will even say, "Oh, it's a good cult." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, my brain needed washed. It's something that I heard all the time, and it drove me nuts.
I know. It's like no.
To get in there, it's a horrible concept. I mean, it's not even a joke. They're saying it, and who else? I mean, that really speaks to how it works, doesn't it? You have to believe there's something really flawed with you to let somebody into your brain and control how you view your perspective on something, especially on yourself and your own ability.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're sucked into the system.
And here's the buy-in. I came from a very very abusive home. So I was already kind of with the mindset that there's something fatally wrong with me. Okay, I was happy that they were sending me to rehab until I figured, because I'm thinking I'll get to talk to a counselor. And it would have been, please help me. I'm fatally flawed. I'll work with you. I'll do any therapy you want. Just give me some help. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. And that was instilled by abusive people. I was no worse off than any other kid, and really not that badly behaved either.
Right. Right.
I was not that, I was a very fat, not particularly popular kid. If I got drugs, it was only because I had the money and somebody was willing to sell me without their friends seeing.
Right.
So I was home at night. There was no out in the streets at all hours kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But being that I was, then you get to this, and at that point, everything I had learned about the world, I had learned from an adult and in school. So when medical professionals tell you this is a disease, you you have it, make you do all kinds of assignments about it, about how you're diseased, and then begin this, their policy was you didn't get out until you did the first 5 steps of the AA, 12 steps.
Right.
So, oh boy,
you didn't get a choice of sponsor. You had a staff member, and you were going to write a 4th step, and you were going to do a 5th step, if you wanted to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I got out without leaving because I got kicked out, but that's a whole other story. I'm good at that. Then later on, I was just I was admitted over serious anxiety issues late after I got out of that one at 15. And I actually dabbled with going to a couple of meetings. But by 17, 18, I had really started to develop, more friendships and doing a lot more partying. I had a driver's license now, and all those horror stories that I heard in the back of my head, I was not using at a problematic level. Yes, if I had enough weed to get high every day, I would smoke a joint every day. Okay, sure. Right. But I'm hearing I'm doing it constantly. I can't stop. All of those little things that they told me meant that I was diseased.
Yep.
Yeah,
okay.
Right. Yes.
They normal behavior, and they tell people that's a sign of this deadly illness. Yeah. And haven't we seen a million people do that?
Yeah.
And if you would try, in the hot seat therapy, that they put you through, if you would try and say, well, I went out 10 times and I only had trouble with, getting too drunk once. Well, see, that's the evidence,
Right.
Always
that's right.
On any shred of difficulty or a less than good time. And they, that's your example of, being
all roads lead.
Yeah, it's like rehab. Rome. All roads lead to treatment, to recovery. There's no way out. It's a giant funnel. That's all it is.
Yes. And in these programs, and including adult rehabs that are currently running, there's never a right answer. There is cannot be right. The only right answer is their answer.
That's right.
Which is, I guess I'm flawed and I have to, please break me down and build me back up again.
Yep.
Yeah. The gaslighting is it's so devastating to every single time you come up with a solution for yourself, they switch the rules and you're constantly kept off balance mentally. And, I did well in rehab in a certain way because the way I grew up, my father was a mental, he would compete with you. So I didn't have a relationship with a father like most people that was supportive. I had a competitor. My dad would mentally compete with me. So if I said, Dad, I think it's a really beautiful day. Well, this was common. Well, it'd be better if our corn would be growing better because the humidity's not right. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Do you know what I mean? Like, why does, and it was
contrary.
Yeah.
Contrary.
Yeah. It's a massive contrarian, but it was all about mentally competing to knock you down. So for me, when I entered the rehab system, I knew the game so intimately and I fucking hated it. I was like, can I just get what I'm thinking out? Would anybody ever listen? Just listen. Cause I was hurting. I was hurt. I was suicidal as a little kid. I had a suicide attempt at 10. I went through all this stuff and I was like, would somebody please just fucking listen to me? But it never happened, And so I was like, oh, this is just like home to me. This is just an extension of home. So rehab became just something that I did that was my lifestyle. And I hear so many people that have that, where they do have an abusive home and they just accept that they're worthless in treatment.
Yeah. The abusive home set me up for the buying into the troubled teen abuse And they were blatant about it. They would say daily, we're breaking you down so hard so that this is tough love and so that we can build you up right. Yeah. And now as a 56-year-old adult, I can go, who the fuck do you think you are that you have a right to first decide that somebody needs broken down? Yeah. And then that you are the one that knows how they should be properly reconstructed.
Yeah, it's demented.
And then have the nerve to say that because you have an addiction that you are inherently self-centered.
Right.
Who's self-centered here?
Yeah.
You think you can, the fate of someone's construction and how to correct it, but I'm the one that's, self-centered and believes I know best.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So you said when we talked earlier that you ended up going. So that was when you and I are exactly the same age, by the way.
15.
So yeah. So that was when you were 15, and then you went back to rehab at 19, right?
Yes. And this was a 90-day adult rehab.
Holy
and
crap, 90 days.
Basically what I end, and very abusive.
Yeah.
This is a rehab where I heard somebody say to a woman who was really quite psychotic, like very mentally ill, that she was the kind of woman who guys take behind the bar, gangbang, and leave there.
Wow.
What part of appropriate therapeutic commentary is that?
Yeah, I know. That's horrible.
Okay, they would play ridiculous games like this therapist would come late to the group rooms, and if they didn't walk into us having an active therapy group without them, we would get half an hour of screamed at. This isn't our group. We don't need group. You need group. And you don't wait for us. I mean, just head games out of the blue like that.
Yeah.
Having spent my career in mental health, there's no reasoning for that.
No,
that's that keeping you off balance scenario.
Well, I can remember like when I went to AA, so I was 22, and he's going to know who I'm talking about. There was a group of women that I went with, and some of them were counselors, right? And they would say things. They were CACs or KSACs, whatever they were called at the time.
Yeah.
And the way that they would treat their sponsees was frightening to me. Like, some of the things that they would say, like, look at you, you're dressed like a whore. Is that what you want? You want people to think that you're a whore? You're like, you need to go change your clothes. You need to change the way you do your hair. You shouldn't have so much makeup on. I mean, just literally cutting people down continuously. The prettier the girl, the worse they treat them. And I mean, it was, I just would kind of watch this now. I didn't get treated that way. And do you know why? Because my dad was a guru. And so they kissed my ass because everybody was in love with my dad. And so my ass got kissed while I was watching them treat all these other women. And I'm like, how is this helpful?
Yeah.
I was the only one out of all of these women that actually had mental health training. I had actually gone to college for that. And I thought, in the mental health realm, there's nothing that says that this is how you treat people. But in addiction treatment, it was very accepted practice. Accepted. Yep.
Very accepted practice. Every year, when because I had a lesser degree for a lot of my mental health work. And so I got the entry-level treatment, and we got trained in positive practices and patient rights and abuse. And if you intentionally humiliated a patient, you are committing abuse, and I could be fined and put in jail if I didn't report you for doing it.
Right.
But if it was rehab, that was tough love.
That was the therapy. That's right. It still is.
Yeah. The crazy part is nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. We're still at a place in our society where you have hundreds of thousands of people going through this mill every decade. and they're being abused. It's the same thing. And now it's, you need to be on medications the rest of your life. Now it's so weird too. It's so weird. It started with, Scientology, Narconon, and those models, all the therapeutic community models saying you have to be drug-free, 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 drug-free. Like you can't even have medical intervention to an extreme. Right. Then as the pharmaceutical industry, as AA started to decline, and as they started to have to get away from the outwardly abusive ways, they had to create the clinical tyranny of experts.
Yeah.
So now there are good drugs and there are bad drugs. The good drugs are Suboxone, Naltrexone, Vivitrol, antidepressants, and they just load you up. And the laws changed, as you know, that if you go to rehab, if they want reimbursement, you have to have a
mental health diagnosis.
That's right, in conjunction with substance use disorder, or else there's no funding. So now there's this massive pharmaceutical just train happening, and these people are getting put on the good drugs. And it's so unfortunate because there is a place for certain medications. There is a place in detox for certain medications. There's, certain situations that it might be appropriate to go on Suboxone if you're in danger of dying of fentanyl or something in your community, whatever it might be. But it's all been homogenized to the best we're going to do is that you're on Suboxone the rest of your fucking life.
No matter what drug you were abusing.
Yeah. Now it's
doesn't matter.
You come in for meth, which doesn't even have any, and they stick Suboxone for life. I mean, what? Now they gave you a drug problem? I mean, it's
bizarre.
Wild.
It's bizarre.
So I digress, but go on. So let's keep going with your history. Our audience to hear.
I'm right on with you. Because I watched. Yeah. I'm sorry. I watched so many people. So let me tie in, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
That my ending up in AA for 35 years.
Yeah.
So after the first rehab and they implant, if you ever have a bad time on drugs, then you have an issue. If you ever question or are concerned about your use, you really got the problem. Well, here I am. I'm 18 years old, out in the world for the first time, where I'd been living in a very, very suppressed situation. Okay, like I wasn't allowed out of the house much. I was never allowed to have money, not even a dime, because my dad controlled my mother that way, and my mother learned to keep control of her kids that way. Yep. So here I am with my own bank accounts and car, and I'm terrified that I'm going to get high and kill somebody. Get high, and drive and kill someone. So I'm just anxious anyway in the world, being new. I went back to meetings. Okay. Yeah. And the first meeting I walked into is a huge meeting in Plum Borough of Penn Hills, and there were three child molesters in that room. So I buddy up with one of the other alka brats who was in that chemical people group in my high school, and we go to meetings again. His mother, of course, was 20 years sober.
Yeah.
Okay. And so my 18-year-old friend was molested by his 35-year-old guru sponsor, male sponsor, and is
way too common.
I'm 18. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was stalked by a 30-some-year-old biker. Like he knew that I was at that home group because I lived close. So he looked up the name in the phone book when you could do that, and would call, hey, I'm stuck and I kind of need a lift, and shit like that. God. To the point where I got stuck in an alley. I got pinned against my car in a dark alley outside of a Saturday night meeting one night with this guy, like on me. Okay. Yep. And I was very close. I had a pocket knife open in my pocket. Luckily some older AA women. It's a shame because AA people saved my life. Okay. Right. So it's not that I don't have love for them. I just now see them as AA victims.
Yeah.
Right.
The AA. Yeah. That's right. The bad part. They are co-inmates.
That's right.
Okay,
That's exactly
who watched
right.
out for each other and taught me a whole lot of great things about living.
Yeah. Yeah, they were great people. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm terrified about the lies they told me about addiction and the way drugs work and the powers drugs have over people.
Yes.
And I bought it in. Because once you're told to be fearful of normal things that happen in life, you're sold. You see it everywhere.
For sure.
Right. That's right.
I was sitting there and I wasn't drinking, and all I thought about was a nice margarita. That's obsession. No, if I thought about, I'm diabetic. If I thought about a milkshake, would that be a fucking disease? Sorry.
Right. Well, nowadays
it wouldn't. It would be normal. Right.
Right.
I had a major issue on my job because they know that I do not work addiction cases because I have issue with the standard of care. And this is the 15th largest medical school in the country, or most prestigious medical school in the country. And I was doing a stop smoking motivational interviewing class. And in one line of my script out of 10 pages said that if they offered me nicotine replacement, that I had to be very happy about it. Okay. Yeah. And I cannot do that. I will not do that because they're using the same lies to now tell people that they must use the patch.
That's right.
That's right. And I know people that have been on the gum for years. It's not innocuous. It has health consequences, and I won't do it. That's right. That's right. So they didn't quite relate. They couldn't see it. And I'm almost afraid that it sounds conspiracy theory. But if you watch commercials, that the Nicorette commercials in the very beginning, they didn't do that. Now they clearly state nicotine is an addiction and you can't stop on your own.
Yes. New York State runs ads continuously.
New York State has active campaigns of you need counseling and you need the patch.
You need replacement.
You need AIDS. You need replacement therapy in order to get over smoking. You will not get over smoking without it. And our state is so communist at that point that they just constantly push this narrative with every type of quote unquote addiction. And it's in every series of commercials. On
gambling
radio.
Is an addiction.
Yeah,
and the irony of New York State.
But
like talks about gambling is an addiction. And the very next commercial is for fucking Lotto.
Yeah, it's hilarious. It's fucking hilarious.
Okay, dude.
It's like making your own customers, dude.
I think it's hysterical.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, in PA, we got gambling a few years back in PA, and on every commercial is for the casino. They have to put on gambling's an addiction. Here's the quit line.
Yes.
Your quit line.
So it's on the same commercial now.
It is. Yeah. It's like the alcohol industry saying, and drink responsibly, even though they know that to their profits come from the 10% of people who drink 50% of the booze, right? It's like drink responsibly, but not really, or else we don't make profits.
Yeah. Okay, so how many? So young rehab, therapeutic community. Then now you're in a regular rehab. You get out of that one,
and now you're in AA.
And then where does it go from there?
I was homeless at that point. If I didn't, my mother wanted me to go to a Christian Bible only farm for druggies, young drug addicts, where you had to work in the field for 8 hours or you weren't allowed to eat. The only reading material was the Bible, no television, no radio. Okay. So I was like, no, thank you. This abusive rehab right here, I'll stay at this one. Okay.
Yeah.
And since it was 90 days, and it's in Butler, PA. And it's about an hour north of Pittsburgh. So a lot of people who had drug problems kind of would go up to that 90-day program and stay in the Butler community. So it was there was a lot of infrastructure there and a lot of support. People had, been taken in, so they took others in. And so thank God I couch surfed until I got, some paychecks in and made a rooming situation with somebody I had been in the rehab with.
Yeah.
And then, so I was centered in, for a 19-year-old out on their own with nothing. I got in with people who were not drinking or using, were trying to live a good life and be helpful to other people. So God bless AA for that.
Yeah, okay? For sure.
God bless those AA members who live those ideals, because I was able to establish myself, go to school. And the entire time I would sit there in these meetings, and in my head, I would be so dissociated, I couldn't even think. All I could hear was, this is a cult. This is really, really a cult.
Yeah.
You know, so I always had difficulty buying, with that concept.
Yeah.
But I was so terrified, and I was in and out. Okay. I was, I'd get 3-4 months in, and then I'd smoke a joint, and I relapsed. Oh, so horrific. Nothing happened. I had an enjoyable 4 hours, and then tremendous guilt.
Right.
And so I was a chronic relapser. And that, over time. Now, I developed multiple years. I was very serious member, and I would really rock the boat of a lot of people when I would go out, because I didn't stop going to meetings. I wasn't hanging with people, places, and things. None of that was in place. It was just that AA is not an answer.
Right.
Okay. My issue was I wanted to enjoy some weed.
Right.
I was not very much into other than that. And eventually I was going to smoke some weed, because we end up doing what we really want to do.
For sure.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So I had a pattern of working really hard to build up great things in my life and end up tearing them to shreds with catastrophic relapse because of is it the Bransma study that talks about the more powerless you feel, the more explosive rehabs?
Yeah.
I always forget if that's Miller or Bransma. That I lived it. Okay. It was, I am out of control. I have relapsed, and I will go whole hog and take everything I can possibly jam into my body as fast as possible before some sober motherfucker in my life stops me.
Right.
So I have been to rehab probably more than 30 times.
Wow.
Despite saying they're not going to change it. Okay.
So let me jump in there, because for the viewers, what Finn is describing, many of you out there probably have had similar experiences, that once you get in your mind that you're in, I call it a waveform. You're in a rehab, you're out of a right. And they call it relapse. And there's all this infrastructure of words that are associated with this. That's what we call a binge construct. It's just the way you start living your life according to guilt. And then we do this in our new, we're doing what's called the addiction solution.
The solution to addiction.
Oh yeah, the solution to addiction. Sorry.
We switched it around.
We switched it around. I'm not used to it yet. But in that, we talk about value creation. And what we mean by that is you will build value into a binge. And the way a lot of people do this when they're in this waveform is they go to rehab, they feel guilty, they get their life together somewhat, and then they realize, I haven't really in my mind solved this issue. I still prefer getting wasted, but I feel so fucking guilty about it. I'm going to have to quietly hide it. That's value creation, right? And then I'm going to stuff as much of this bender into this private little explosion. And all of that is created with this idea, this false, crazy idea that rehab says you're an addict and it's inevitable and you're bad for wanting this. So what does that do? That makes you go underground. It makes you go dark. It makes you feel guilty.
And you're permanently broken. You're always going to want it. Nothing else is going to be as good to you. Nothing's going to feel as good. And now you got all of these behavioral addictions and all this dopamine bullshit.
Oh, that's a whole nother
making
thing.
People think nothing feels as good as my thing.
Right. And I can't have it. So then what happens is that creates even more value, because now you're desperate to get the thing you love so much. And so it's inevitable that we have created the very monster that they predict would happen. And so you play it out, and that's what Finn is talking about. So then you build your life up and you tear it down. You're in this waveform, 30 rehabs, and what's happening in your life?
I'm trashing a pretty good professional reputation. I ended up working in a very niche field, forensic mental health, which I started when I was 27. Working with murderers and axe murderers at 27 years old.
Fascinating.
It is.
Yeah,
it was
awesome.
A really interesting. And actually, that's one thing that's always baffled me. Here, I'm a 15-year-old kid, and they're telling my mother that the best place that the only place that will save my life is a room full of people, adults who are using heroin, access to any drug on the planet. Okay. To this day, if I wanted a substance, the first place and the only place I'd have to go is an NA meeting.
Yes, that is so
I wanted
true.
to get high. That's where I'm going.
Yep.
Yep.
That was my experience. I think I went to maybe 4 NA meetings, and every time I got offered drugs, I was like, this is not for me.
Yeah. And unfortunately, and along with the setup that you talked about is you need a medication for life now. I have seen that both sides of that crash and kill.
Yeah, me too.
The people who truly bought into the powerlessness, and then they shove them into a group of drunks who think you are not, any kind of medication is a crutch. So you will not, I sat outside of a meeting one night talking to this lovely young man who had just gotten out of rehab again and was in a 3-quarter-way house. And he was talking to me about going off of Suboxone because, the people in the meeting convinced him that if he didn't, that he would never get the vital spiritual experience.
Oh, geez, God.
We all know if you don't get the vital spiritual experience, you won't remain sober. And I said, I would really, can you talk with somebody more about that before you go off your subs? Not that I'm wanting anybody on anything, but if they are, at least they stay alive.
Yeah, don't get the right information, not that bullshit.
Right.
Yeah. And there's a way to come off it, right? Well,
yes.
I woke up the next morning to find out that this lovely young man named Mark was now dead. He had already gone off it, and he died from his first use. And Mark was number 11 of the 15 people I lost. Their names were on that board in a year and a half, and I stopped counting at that point. I at that point had started to look into alternative programs. I found I can't, Monica's group, Leaving AA.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I had gotten some contacts, and Freedom Model kept popping up occasionally. And I was in my zeitgeist, but I thought that you guys were an abstinence-based program. And I can remember saying, we're not. Michelle commented, we are not. We support whatever, anyone's free to choose, right? So I did check you out. So I had helped start first an atheist AA meeting. So my world was opening up, and I was really starting to reject all of the AA stuff. I had been a big book thumper. I carried a pocket big book everywhere I went, and I can still quote multiple verses.
Yes.
So that's how fundamentalist I got, because it just makes sense. If I'm still having relapse, then I should do it harder.
That's right.
What else am I going to do?
Yeah,
so
work the program.
I also became a smart facilitator and brought the first SMART meeting into Pittsburgh. I helped bring the first Dharma recovery meeting into Pittsburgh, just trying to help. I find
so you're walking out of the cult.
Somebody in a meeting.
Yeah. So you're walking out of the cult. You're figuring it out.
Yes.
Okay.
I was starting to lose my religion as far as AA went. And at one point, somebody came to the atheist meeting and was interested in other meetings. So I was privately having a conversation with him and letting him know that SMART existed and what I knew about alternatives. And a very hardcore big book thumper came up and completely got in my face to disrupt me telling him something that wasn't AA. And I swung with him.
Right.
Okay. And had my friends not held me back, I would have beat him with his own walking stick. Okay. Right. And I'm like, because I could no longer. The ethics were, if somebody comes to an AA meeting, they should hear the AA message. And I couldn't do that anymore. I couldn't.
Yeah, we remember those days.
So talk about purgatory. My goodness.
Yeah.
That's a tough place to be.
I was like, I will never. It was very tough. I'm 35 years in now. Every single human in my life was AA.
Yep.
Every single one. Because at this point, I don't speak to family anymore.
Right.
So AA was it. Yeah. So I walked away. I would never darken another AA door again. Yeah. And so I continued to kind of struggle with binge drinking. Because I don't like alcohol in any way, shape, or form. I simply want it unconscious.
Right.
As long as I was as close to death as possible was exactly what I was going for. And I just explored everything I could. And I took a lot of issues early on with what you guys had to say, about the power of drugs. I remember talking to Danny White. And he's like, what's your deal? What's the attraction? And I'm like, it deals with my trauma. And he's like, well, how the simple question, how's it do that? And I was just so livid at that question.
Danny's so
question
good.
I've been asked in years. Okay, seriously, best question
exactly
I've ever been
asked.
And the only answer was, if you're unconscious, you're not feeling traumatized.
And you know what?
That was all I could offer.
And that's such a great point. I want to digress for a moment on that point, because this is such a great conversation. So as you and Danny asks you that question, right? How exactly does the drug do A, B, C, D, or E? And people, boy, they dance. They suddenly start dancing. Yeah. They start, because it can't, right? On its face, it can't. So people come up with the platitudes or the things that they've been told. But your answer was actually accurate. And that is that if I'm unconscious, if it physically creates a scenario of unconsciousness, right? Yeah. So you have to literally separate the human brain, the physical brain, from your mind for a temporary period of time with an overdose toxicity, right? That's literally what you're doing, is the only answer. So now I don't want the audience, everybody going out and getting so shit-faced that they're unconscious.
They pass out, right?
But so anything barring that experience, the drug isn't doing any of it. That's all interpretive. So I just think that it's a great example of just a small point of what the freedom model does, is analyze truth. Let's really look at this. And let's give Finn his due. If he's drinking to the point of unconsciousness, it's effective. And I would say, okay, if that's your mission, it's a pretty fucking brutal tool, right?
Right.
Other people go on vacation. They distract themselves with maybe art or a motorcycle ride, but you can certainly drink a bottle of vodka to unconsciousness, right? So anyway, I digress.
Many times.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Been there.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
After I was able to accept that, he was asking a real question. He was,
yes,
because I'm trained in motivational interviewing, and that was a fantastic way to allow me the agency of answering for myself.
Yes.
How is this operating? Let's figure it out. And it was very clear to me that it wasn't doing what I thought it was, and in fact was continuing to create more trauma. Because when you get
kicking
so
the can
drunk
down the road,
you end up in the emergency room. Drinking a quart of vodka on top of a script of Ambien, you end up taking 90 Ambien. And, which I have the tolerance to. I absolutely did it. Okay. And woke up the next day. I was fucked up for 3 days, but anybody else could very well have died.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I was, I had, and once I see for myself being allowed my own logic, that's one thing that was so devastating to me is AA did not provide me that.
No.
Okay.
No, you're not allowed to think for yourself.
Preloaded the logic.
Yep.
Right.
That's right.
Or when you are, they give you all these false parameters, false dichotomies. Like you can't be a little bit pregnant. Well, addiction, behavior about drinking is not pregnancy. That's a false equivalent.
Yeah.
For sure.
Doesn't even apply. Yeah.
But most people, I wasn't trained until much recently to look at the logical fallacies in the arguments that they're used by addiction professionals, because that little bit pregnant comes from every addiction professional I've ever heard.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think I have a little problem with alcohol. It's like being a little bit pregnant. You're going to, it's progressive. You're going to end up under a bridge tomorrow, kind of.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So let me jump in. Let me jump in here. So when you were introduced, I didn't realize this. So when you were introduced to the freedom model, so you land in these leaving AA groups, are you still at that point drinking to unconsciousness occasionally and just in that pattern, or were you already matriculating out of that? Where were you in that spectrum?
I had started and got certified for medical cannabis card because of certain medical conditions. I have really bad neuropathy. I have diabetic retinopathy in my eyes. So that was a decent, and the drugs that they give to treat those are just horrific brain-wise. They just batter your brain and aren't very effective. And I liked cannabis anyway. So I got my cannabis card, and so it's a hell of a lot easier drug,
Yeah,
I don't think that anybody needs it, but I personally am very, very happy allowing myself.
Yeah. Yeah,
and my eyesight's good, and I don't have neuropathy pain.
Right.
So,
that's amazing.
And I can function. I don't use it before work because my job is incredibly attention focused. I have to attend to my physical portrayal, the words that come out of my mouth, and every behavior that the doctor is exhibiting, so that I can grade and document. So I can't use it on the job, and I have no desire. PDP, perfect example right there. I have zero desire to use cannabis and go to work because I enjoy my job. I love my job, and that's it would be in my way.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
So that shows you I was never out of control with cannabis use. I am very controlled with cannabis use. I use it when I want and never against my will. So that rolled into, well, I'm still drinking, and I still find myself wanting to, and I don't ever want a drink. I don't like the taste of alcohol. I consider it a blunt instrument, like a sledgehammer. And so I just would drink as much of that nasty, cheap crap as fast as I could to get as unconscious as I could. And then I'd keep it by my bedside and continue that for as long as it lasted. And just started, the podcasts are much easier for me to consume. I lost my love of books a long time ago. So I did get the book. I would read some, supplement with the podcast, get into it more. And I had to argue all the arguments that people bring up when they first come to the page. Well, what about dopamine? I was on their side. I was not hearing it. Okay. And the more that I listened to the logic on the other side and saw actual real life examples of, you don't get the same dopamine burst that you would for your girlfriend with your mom. Right. And that's your mind, deciding on what is pleasurable and what isn't. It is not the meat in your head telling you.
That's right.
That's huge.
That's a great example.
So that's why I'm willing to, to discuss that stuff on the page so much, is because you telling me was no different from the assholes at rehab telling me how it worked. I needed to debate it for myself, and the ideas had to prove themselves true to me.
So let me jump in there again. So this is all for the benefit of the audience, right? When we're coaching somebody, I want to make it a point that Finn has never been officially coached by anybody here. So, but
we've
the
had
way
conversations,
group talk, within our social media accounts and pages, but everything that we do, we were very careful about as a presentation. And even the way the books are, the chapters are written, we're not telling you, it's not prescriptive. And there are going to be a lot of new people that see this because that's the way the podcast works, right? I just want people to know, I, like Finn, like Michelle, like Steve, everybody, Ryan, everybody that's involved in the freedom model or has been privy to it, we've all been in the same boat of being fucked with like lab rats and being told how to live our lives. And it's horrible. So when Steve and I wrote the initial chapters and then Michelle looked at it and edited it, and we got through that whole horrendous process of writing, we were very cautious to not be prescriptive, to allow you the autonomy, to celebrate your autonomy, to say, I celebrate the fact that you have a mind of your own. Use it. Here's the information. Use it. Now, it can be more difficult when you're coaching somebody because you're having a dialogue where it's very easy to manipulate people if you're not careful. So what we did was we do what's, he talks about motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is just the Socratic method in new clothes. It's just a more scientific version of this. Basically, you ask a lot of questions. You say, hey, what do you think about this? Tell me about what, and then you
what's your experiences with this? What's your experiences with that? So that you can,
so you self-discovery.
Yeah. Well, I mean, AA kind of did that in a way, but it had you focus on things that benefited AA. So what I mean by that is, like, when I went to my first meeting or, talked to the woman that became my sponsor, and she asked me this question, did you ever, go out one night and say we were only going to have 2 drinks and you had 10? And I'm like, well, yeah, I did that. She didn't ask me the other question, which is, did you ever go out and say you were going to have 2 drinks and just have 2 drinks? And the answer would be yes.
Right.
Right.
Very selective.
So it's very selective. So it's kind of, but with motivational interviewing and what we do, we're going to show you the opposite. I mean, if you look for reasons that you're out of control, you'll find them.
That's right.
But if you look for ways that you are in control, you'll find them.
Yeah. And then you get to pick what model are you going to follow? And that's up to you. We don't have a dog in the fight. And that, I think, is where what Finn just said, and that is he was going to, I'm not putting words in your mouth, but you can correct me. He was going to figure it out on his own because he's got an independent spirit. He's been abused so goddamn much, like I was, where you're like, you have radar for that. You're like, I don't want anybody telling me what the fuck to think.
Yeah.
And I just need to figure this out on my own. And I think that you just gave a great example of that, how you walked out of AA.
That was, it's pretty awesome.
It is. So continue. So now you're drinking less, you're doing the marijuana thing, you're listening to the podcast, you're engaging. You're basically using motivational interviewing to yourself in a way. You're asking the questions. You're using your autonomy. And so I'll shut up now. So go on with your story.
No, and it's kind of morphed. I just found that I prefer no alcohol. So it's been quite a while since I've had any. Occasionally, if something comes around, I will indulge in some. I tend to prefer to keep things natural, like mushrooms. Because they're not. It's hard to have dangerous effects from what nature and what we've evolved with.
Right.
I have no desire to get any party drugs, anything like that, and it's been fine. I just go and live my life. What has been interesting is after that process of leaving, there was still some folks that they came through in our friend group from the atheist meeting. All of those people have left the program and left the disease model in the dust. All of them consume moderately and are thriving.
Yep.
Yes.
And I've gotten to become sort of an AA exit counselor.
Yes. Yes.
Many people.
We did that for a long time.
Right?
Yeah.
So I get contacted all the time. The latest is, a dear old friend who has quite a number of years in the program, but has always been, let's say, less than bought in fully.
Yeah.
And who is now kind of evaluating, what their role is, and it's hard for me not to give all this shit, and like jump on them. And I kind of just sit back and go, yep, I felt that way. And here's, my process with it.
Yeah.
It's still very traumatic to me. There's a rehab a few blocks away. It's an outpatient halfway house thing, Alpha House. And I know as recently as a few years ago that they were still having adult men wearing neck signs with pictures of crying babies on them, saying, confront me when I start to whine.
Oh my God.
I just, internally, it makes me want to go ballistic. And so now I'm trying to figure out how to, I don't think I'll ever lose my need to step to this, to try and dismantle the disease model of addiction. For looking at the NESARC data, it's blatant. We have so much data and so many well-credentialed professionals: Lance Dodes, Carl Hart, Stanton Peele, Mark Lewis, not all of them well-credentialed, who are speaking to it, speaking the scientist language to the scientists, and only to watch Nora Volkolt move the goalposts yet another time and say, well, it's a different reason now, but it's still a brain disease. Okay, I wish that
she's so full of shit.
I know. I can't believe she's still around. I know. I know.
So,
I know.
So at this point, being what that I have a little bit of contact with actual physicians. Some days, depending on what hospital system I'm working with, I am locked in a room with an attending physician in between testing events for students. And if I can work it into the conversation, I'll ask them their beliefs on is addiction to disease. And I have never once, only one, and he was in recovery himself.
Yeah,
was an addiction specialist. Okay. Every other physician has basically said, I really don't see it as a disease.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Some of them get very vocal about with their frustration of treating it as a disease and that causing harm.
Yeah. Yes.
Good. Which is very much what I have seen.
Yeah.
So I try and let them know. I had a researcher at Pitt take down the freedom model information because she had a degree in psychology and has only been fed the disease model, but has a husband who was struggling with the issue and family members who had been in the recovery. And she said, I love how you call it the recovery identity, because I know that, boy, do I know that. And it was clear that it was problematic. And she was fascinated to hear that there's people that, are saying that it's not a disease and that a faith healing cult is not appropriate treatment for anything that can cause death.
Right. Yeah. It's voodoo. It's literally voodoo. So I think this is a good place to end. We're at an hour.
Yeah.
I just want to talk about, because this is a good way to wrap it up, and then we'll have closing remarks. So Michelle and I and Ryan got together a couple of weeks ago, and we said, we've been doing these 2-day workshops with people, and I'm listening to Finn's story, and we've been doing these podcasts every other week with people who have left AA. And our path out of AA was 12 years. Finn's, yours was decades of really trying to figure out this thing. And we hear these stories, and it's painful to hear them, but it's also liberating, because I know that at least we're using this experience to save lives. So what Michelle and I do in 2 days with people is we go through your binge construct, and people fly in and spend 2 days with us. And we go through the entire, what Finn went through in years, what took me 12 years to figure out. We can do that in 2 days. Well,
with one person.
One person. But then I said, how can I can't change the world with one person. I really want to have the freedom model, or freedom, be the replacement of tyranny. It's pretty simple. It's really simple. Literally, AA says this: do the opposite and you'll probably get your shit together really fast, right? But here's what I want to say is we are going to be launching the solution to addiction. That's what we're going to call it. And it's really simple. You can join us.
It's online.
It's going to be an online event, 3 to 4 hours. We have to figure it out. We built it. And basically we're taking everything we do in a 2-day workshop and we're giving it to the world.
Squishing it.
And it's pretty packed.
It is packed.
But it's gonna arm anybody, because what we're finding is that, Finn, like you, like a lot of people don't want to read a 470-page book. They don't want to spend a lot of time
20 hours,
40
hours, whatever it is, watching our videos
on our online program. So they're suffering because they're not getting the information. Well, if you want me and Michelle to give it to you in 3 hours, we're going to do that. And anybody can join us. It's going to be this. It's going to be, there's going to be Q&As. It's going to be really intense. And I just, as you were talking, Finn, I thought to myself, my God, the amount of years just between us, decades of struggle. It's not
necessary.
It's not necessary. We now have the information, but we want to give it to people in a succinct way. So I just want to announce that here. Yeah. So
we're gonna be offering them four live ones in April. And April 1st is when people can
start signing up. You'll see it land on our website, and the website is thefreedommodel.org. Yep. So, all right. Any parting thoughts, Finn? It's been wonderful to hear you say.
Great.
I learned a lot more about you, by the way.
Yeah, really great.
No. Yeah, I appreciate it. I always think I want to go up and fish the pond, but now you guys don't have the pond anymore. So one day,
I know.
Take me hunting. Take me hunting.
Okay. Yeah.
He would totally do that.
Yeah, I would. It's freaking awesome.
I'd want to. I always wanted to. Yeah. So no, I appreciate so much what you do, and it is you put yourselves into it, and that's important. It was important to me, because if I did not hear that and know your stories from the many, many people that I grew up with and lived it myself, I would not have bought in so easily. But the personal experience, it comes with so much more. So best of luck with all of it. I certainly appreciate all that you've given me for free.
Yeah. Yes, of course.
And thank you for sticking around the group, because your answers are always right on the money. When people are asking questions about the freedom model, or they're asking questions about their personal issues, your help to them is tremendous. So thank you so much for that.
It is. And we value that participation with people. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, everybody. Thank you, Finn. And
you stick around, Finn,
have a great one.
We're gonna end the recording. And all right, if anybody has any questions about the freedom model, about our coaching, about the upcoming workshops we're going to be offering, you can go to thefreedommodel.org, or you can call us at 1-888-424-2626.
All right, everybody, take care.
Are you struggling with a drug or alcohol problem, but you don't want to go to rehab or group meetings? Well, that's why we created the non-12-step Freedom Model Coaching Program in 2011. Through video conferencing on Zoom or Skype, you can work privately with a certified Freedom Model coach from your home or office on your schedule. And here's the best part. With the Freedom Model, you'll never be labeled an addict or an alcoholic, and we won't tell you to go to 12-step meetings or hamper your life with endless recovery rituals. Instead, you can learn exactly why addiction isn't a disease and how you can solve the problem for good and move on with your life. Do you want to be completely free from your addiction? Do you want to never have to attend meetings, rehabs, or addiction counseling ever again? And do you want to solve your problem from the comfort of home? Then call us at 888-424-2626 to talk with a Freedom Model coach today and experience the Freedom Model difference.